Okay, good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'll kick off. First of all, just before we do get started, if you have got a question, you should have icons up at the top. There's one for a hand. If you click on that, I will keep my eye out for it, and then I'll halt proceedings and let you ask your question. Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll have both Savvy and Luke tell you a bit about themselves and their labels and how they got into actually having labels and running a label. And then we will have discussions and advice, and you can ask questions, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so right. So who wants to go first? Luke or okay. Go, Luke. So,
all right.
Right, yeah. Is that you were pointing?
Sorry, that was a through the screen point.
Right, okay.
So, Savvy from Saving Grace, off you go.
All right. So evening all. My name is Savvy, also known as Nigel Cudjoe. I own a label called Saving Grace Music. I think it's been running since 2009, 12. I kind of got into putting out my own releases via being an artist in my own right. So I was a recording artist, started out in Huddersfield, came from the UK hip hop scene, the underground kind of UK hip hop scene. Started in Huddersfield, moved to Manchester and started studying music and kept going with my craft and kind of it's a larger city. So there were more opportunities from there. Started to build a bit of a name for myself in Manchester, and then opportunities opened up in London. Signed to a label at the time, which was kind of like the biggest like underground hip hop label at the time in London, called Low Life Records. So I put records out with like artists alongside artists like Jess and Maestro. I mean, you won't know these names, but toured the UK, building the name under a moniker of actually a savior, not Savvy. That was like a transitional point for me. But got signed to a label, put records, EPs, and singles and albums out. Built a bit of a name, and then started putting my own independent releases out on my own imprint, it wasn't really a label. It was just a way to just put other stuff out, because a label, which no fault of the label's on, but no matter how big or small you are, you still got windows, and there's a lot to be done to put a record out as a label. So you can't put everybody out all at the same time. So there'll only be so many opportunities to release with the label you signed to. So eventually I started putting my own releases out. That gained momentum. And then I started supporting other artists, and I got to a point in London where the label became more multi-genre, and I brought it back home to Huddersfield. So I kind of done like a circle of Huddersfield, Manchester, London, back to Huddersfield, and then pushed the label forward with like a kind of like a flagship release, you could say, call it A-Loop Theory, which I'd made in London and brought back to Huddersfield and released, and that did really well at the time, and kind of like established the label like in any kind of serious way. And then since about 2009-10, I've just been running the label, putting other local talent out, as well as talent from across the UK as well, out on the label. So that's kind of how I've got to this point. That synced enough.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Savvy. Right, okay, Luke, it's your turn. So yeah, off you go.
Yeah, so I'm Luke. I currently work at Come Play With Me Records, which is a label based in Leeds. But I kind of first got into the industry. Well, I moved up to Leeds 6 years ago to study, and in our final year of our undergrads, me and like one of my best mates, Louis, we decided that we wanted to start a label. It was like during the pandemic, and you know, we were really struggling with like the lack of kind of a creative outlet, being really bogged down with work and inside and just sad in general. So we were like, let's do something fun. And a lot of our friends were like DJing at the time. We'd kind of picked up DJing by running a sound system together with another friend. So we've been doing a lot of like just running sound system events at like house parties and stuff like that, and DJing a lot. And we're like very kind of connected with the student like underground electronic scene. So yeah, we started Give Me a Break, which is the label. Yeah, it would have been about 3.5 years ago now, and that started off just kind of like a mix series. So getting DJs that we'd like done parties with, or like other mates who like recommended them to like do mixes for us that we put out on like SoundCloud, and like we kind of just tapped into what SoundCloud was kind of pushing forward at that time, which was like free downloads and edits. There's this program called Hyped It, which is like a feature that you can use on SoundCloud where you can like get loads and loads of plays really quickly, and like it converts really nicely into more of a organic following on like your socials and on your SoundCloud. So we kind of made the most of that, started pushing these free downloads out a lot, and then we wanted to like take things up a bit and started doing releases. So we started doing digital EPs, and we're kind of just like figuring out as we went along, working out like all the things you kind of need to make a label work, like a distributor and like good branding and marketing and socials and everything else, which I'm sure we'll come on to. And then we just kind of gradually scaled things up to the point where we were doing our first physical releases. And at that point, we got like support from Launchpad, which is another like really great organization in Leeds, part of Music Leeds, and they gave us like mentoring and some financial like support for our first record, which did really well. Like we were really happy with that, and we used that to like reinvest back into the label and have done 2 physical releases since. And yeah, we just like kind of carry on as is. We're just about to launch like a new sub label, so that would be fun, splitting the sound up a little bit more. But kind of off the back of the Launchpad mentoring, which is where I met Tony, I managed to get the job as a label assistant at Come Play With Me in January of this year, so still relatively recently. And that kind of started as like a label assistant role, kind of order fulfillment, like a bit of distribution, that kind of thing. But then within like around 6 months, kind of scaled that up to be doing more sort of distribution management and like product management. So basically just like doing all the steps that you need to take like a demo from an artist to a record, and like placing the orders, getting the pressing sorted, doing all the distribution for physical and digital, and kind of tying that in with like A&R as well. Like we're a small team, so we all kind of A&R together, but that's like one of my favorite parts of the job. So I've been quite heavily involved in that. And obviously like it's an exciting time to Come Play With Me with the EMI North announcement in January, which we're partnered with. So that's been a kind of an opportunity to balance what we're doing to support like underrepresented communities in the North with like building a more kind of traditional commercial label. So yes, it's been exciting. Been a bit of a roller coaster journey so far, but very, very enjoyable.
Sounds great. When you, I mean, Savvy, for you, when is it when you identify an artist? So we'll talk a little bit about A&Ring. When is it something you see them, you go to a gig, or you hear them somewhere on?
I would say anything in between. So it could be there's artists that I've spoken to and given my details to, and they don't get back to me next week. They get back to me in 6 months. or even later than that with something. Or it could be I've gone to a night and heard them playing, and they've, declared on the mic this is their new tune, their new demo, and I've like wrangled them. It could be literally any, like, seize any opportunity possible, but at the same time, quality control. But yeah, basically, yeah, any way possible, whether they come to me or I go to a venue and see them perform, or support acts are always, going out to see stuff. Support acts are good, but then, SoundCloud, even though there's a lot of artists on there, SoundCloud can still be a useful tool to check out new artists. Bandcamp as well. And then I thought, just I've always been open to, feel free to get in contact. Can't always get back to everybody like right there and then, but people always can send me a link to their demo or the project they're working on, or, it doesn't even have to be finished. So I remain open, and then I kind of, try and engage as well.
Brilliant. And Luke, with Come Play With Me again, how is it, do you, when you say the team A&R, is that when stuff gets sent in, or again, is it a couple of you went to a gig and you saw someone new, or?
Yeah, it's with Come Play With Me, it's been a bit of a shift for me, to be honest, because with Give Me a Break, it was like we started it and everything was online, so it wasn't the case where we'd go to a club night and see a DJ like do a set of their own tunes and we'd be like, oh, they're so sick, we want to sign them. It wasn't really like that. It was kind of just like all on Instagram and social media and SoundCloud, and it was like working out who's like at the right trajectory where we can help build what they're doing and like kind of take them to the next stage. But with like Come Play With Me, it's way more like real life, and that's like obviously amazing to have. I think that's like one of the best things about A&Ring is like going to gigs and like seeing artists play live and testing out new tunes and stuff. But I think it's working out like what the purpose of your label's like demographic is. Like for Give Me a Break, we like try and do as much to connect with the North as possible, but we're still quite open to working with artists like around the world, and we've worked with like a lot of artists in like Germany and Australia and like the States and stuff, so it's quite broad. But with Come Play With Me, we're like a bit more directly focused on supporting artists in the North, so it's kind of, once you've got that demographic there, it's a lot easier to then go and do that like in-person A&Ring, because we're at the venues every week having pints anyway, so it's like it's way more natural. But yeah, I think like going to gigs, I think for me like it's a bit of a combination of both. Like when I was kind of working out what I wanted to do, and obviously I'm still working out what I want to do, but when I was like trying to get my head around the landscape of the industry and what kind of positions there were, you look at like A&Rs at major labels and it's just like all data driven and all like, let's use AI to like filter through these millions of artists on Spotify and work out who's going to be the next Billie Eilish. But I don't think it's necessarily like that across the board. I think like obviously that works for the majors and it's a business, so that makes sense. But I think like it's been reassuring that Come Play With Me and like other independents across the country aren't limited to that. They're kind of, we will check out an artist's TikTok and Instagram and their socials to see whether they're making the effort to engage with those tools, but it's not the most important thing. If a band has like an amazing live show and they've got like the next big post-punk album, then it's like it doesn't really matter if they're not making the most out of TikTok. So I think it's getting a balance. But yeah, one of my like friends who's also in music was saying that like, and this really resonated with me, is like if you got an artist who is really strong live and also who can produce their own music, and is very like motivated and driven and will actually put the work in so that it's not always on the label. Those are like three really important things, because I think sometimes, like, without wanting to sound horrible, I think sometimes like with emerging artists, there's a expectation that the label will just do everything. And obviously there is a certain degree to which that is true, but there is still a lot of things that the artist will have to do regardless of whether a label's involved or not, like promoting the music. So I think having like an artist who already kind of not necessarily understands the industry, but is trying to understand the industry is like quite an important thing, for us anyway at the moment.
Well, it's quite important, wouldn't you say, for artists to engage with their audience and, you know, and interact with them, especially with social media. I mean, it's so much easier than, you know, way back in my day. But yeah, and sort of keeping them engaged on social media and doing stuff specific, you know, that they know their audience likes, like, you know, behind the scenes videos or a little live thing specifically for your fans is an important part of that promotion, isn't it? Savvy.
Yeah, no, I was just going to reiterate what Luke was saying, kind of. The self-motivated artist, like there's some kind of drive there. They're making some effort to, even, you know, even if the artwork isn't that good, but you can see they've tried to make some artwork, or they've, you know, they've got ideas for the video, but they just haven't got the facilities for it. But I also kind of, it's a triangle, but I look at kind of points. So social media is definitely an important factor, but it can be completely irrelevant if they've got really strong live performance. They engage with radio really well. Like their branding is good, you know, and they've got material. It's kind of these things work together. If they've got all of them, they're away and they probably don't need us. But you know, like things can compensate for others. Like social media is great, but if that's weaker and they've got really good live show and they've gone to work on touring and they've planned it out and they've got 12 dates across the country, but they barely post on social media, I could still be interested.
Yeah.
Versus an artist who doesn't really gig that much, but they're all engaged through Spotify and social media, and their route is that way. So it's like 1,001 ways to skin a cat. There are fundamentals that they need to be doing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So once you've found the artist, I suppose the next stage is recording the music if it needs it. And I'm assuming there are those situations where you've taken the artists on, and then though they have recordings, you know that you've got to take them into the studio, and you've got to do that recording to a higher standard. So once that's done, what's the next stages? What happens next? Once you got the music in the bag and it's recorded, mixed, mastered.
So, sorry, go for it.
I was gonna say, I guess it's getting the package together, getting the elements together. So whether we're making a music video, some artists, I mean, now more and more you need some visuals, you need some way of engaging the audience publicly. So a video is a good idea, especially if you spent money on being in the studio and you know, perfecting the track. It's kind of like, yeah, it's so, some artists are more how can I say, resourceful in their own right. They can mix their own stuff, and all you've got to do is master it. Then there's room for you to, you know, maybe splash out more on, you know, the elements. But yeah, the next thing is getting the video together, getting the artwork together. If they have a logo, or just, you know, the branding in essence. A lot of artists can make songs and they don't have a title for their songs and stuff like that. It's just all the finicky details, trying to get dates lined up to promote the release. If it's a single, you may not necessarily have a launch party. You may just be trying to garner some support slots or some other dates in other kind of venues, you know, some record shops let you do live performances and stuff like that. If it's a larger release, then you can think about a launch party. But it's yes, I guess for me, yeah, it's it's those elements. It's the artwork, it's the branding, it's the visuals, and some way of generating discussion around the release as it comes out. Ideally, I'll try and get a collection of releases, at least an EP, so there's some mileage to it, because as soon as a single's out, if you're dealing with PR and promotion, the next question is what's next. Like, oh, that was great, but what's next? So it's kind of like an EP can kind of serve that. An album does even more to serve that. That's why the long play is still relevant. But yeah, I guess essentially it's all the factors in place enable you to engage with that single as much as possible.
Luke, have you got more to add to that? I mean,
yeah, I feel like Savvy touched on most things. I guess like you're saying, building a package and working out like a campaign timeline is like a really important thing from a label perspective, because obviously like juggling multiple like artists campaigns at the same time, you want to have space between them. So I really like sitting down with an artist and setting out like a 3-month campaign timeline where we've got a good 4 weeks in between each like singles. So maybe you do 2 singles and then the EP drops on the 3rd month, or maybe if you're doing an album campaign, you do more singles, or if you're doing like a 2-track single, you maybe just do 1 or just straight up release that. And then just factoring in, like you said, kind of having the assets like really far in advance, like as far as possible in advance, because there'll always be reasons for the time to just get squashed, and things will just end up getting pushed back, and that is when it gets stressful. And for me, like where we've made mistakes in the past because you're trying to play catch up. But I think like if you have your masters, your artwork, your branding, your logos, like potentially music videos, live sessions at the start of your 3 months, then you plan your release, you've got your singles coming out, you've had your conversations with your PR manager if you're using one, you've got like content from the live sessions and the music videos to funnel into like digital marketing spend, and then like you're building like a social media and promotional campaign around those singles coming out. So with a music video and a live session, you could easily generate like enough content to cover yourself over the course of that 3 months, posting like 2 or 3 times a week on social media. So it's kind of doing a lot with little. And even though there's so many things to think about in there, it's one of those situations where when you find like the right team of people, whether that's like within the label or externally, then it just becomes like quite a fluid process. And obviously on top of all of that, if you're doing physicals, then it's another 3 months back, because you need to wait for the vinyl to get pressed and any kind of like proofing of the artwork and all of that stuff. So that is definitely a long process, and one which can be very stressful, but is very rewarding as well.
Yeah, so I'd 100% agree with that. It's the more time you can give yourself, like, and the more artillery, if that makes any sense, the more bullets you can put in your gun before you start shooting off. Like that is the ideal. Like you've got extra footage, you've got alternative versions of the performance, whatever you can get together in advance. It's better to you've just finished recording in December. I would never tell an artist what to do. I advise, but you get into the new year. February is a good time, but you might be worth giving yourself a month or 2 just to get more material together to support the release. It might be worth that extra month. You'll get more out of the release in the end, rather than not necessarily rushing. But I understand it, because I'm an artist myself, and when you finished it and you kind of, if I leave this forever, this will be old. But it's old to you. It's not old to the listeners.
Yeah.
So, you always got to kind of be mindful of that, and give yourself that time to get the most out of the release.
Definitely.
Okay. So is there still delays with pressing vinyl at the moment?
since the pandemic and like the kind of aftermath of that, things have kind of come back down to a level where they were. As far as my experience has been, we were talking about this the other day, but like COVID and then Adele pressing like 500,000 records kind of just ruined it for everyone else, which is fine. I'm not salty, but I think like it was slightly unnecessary, a bit of a salt in the wound moment. But I think since then the pressing plant seems to have like worked hard to get everything kind of back and running as it was. And they seem to be like relatively kind of mindful of the fact that there have been those delays. So it's like, well, let's like work to get your releases into progress as quick as possible, kind of thing, which has been great.
Okay, all right. Peter, you've got a question.
Yeah, Luke. Can you just put a number on that? So what is the kind of delay time for getting vinyl pressed at the moment?
So the usual time we're getting quoted at the moment is between 9 to 12 weeks. So you're looking in the space of about 3 to 4 months. Usually get the test presses within the first month, and then it's just like any other delay from that point. If the test press needs to kind of get altered, or like there's any kind of amendments to the artwork, then that can obviously just delay the process. But yeah, like Savi was kind of saying, with releasing in general, it's really hard because like a lot of our artists, for Give Me a Break, come to us and they're like, oh, why is everything taking so long? Like, we need to release this now because, you know, our fans are waiting for our music, and, you know, I don't want the music to go cold. And like, we're always like, completely get it, but like, let's just do it properly so that your music has a chance of reaching the most people. And I think a lot of that timeline comes down to thinking about the most like minute details, like, have you got a radio edit that you can send to BBC to upload to get a little play on introducing? Because that's a great way of meeting new people. And like Sabi was saying, are you going to do flyering for your show and walk around the city and stick up QR codes? Like, there's so many things to think about, which can be overwhelming at times. And I realised the question was about pressing plants, so I'll stop now. But
that's fine. It's all good stuff. Keep going.
But yeah, I think that's physicals are a bit of almost like another kettle of fish. Like, sometimes it definitely feels like it's taken quite a long time for me to get my head around it, because you can order physicals, but then it's like working out which pressing plant to go with. Is there like a vinyl consultant that you need to go through as a middleman to reach those pressing plants, which is often the case. And like, on top of that, whether you want to do what Sarah does and just press like well, I don't know if you just did this, but press a dub plate through like a local smaller run pressing plant, or do like a 300, 500 press, or you want to do cassettes, or you want to do CDs, and who on each of those formats is going to distribute those things for you. We've had like multiple different physical distributors that work in different territories to make sure that the spread's as like wide as possible, but that's very complicated as well. So it's one of those things where it's taken like a long time for us to get to that point, but you can definitely do it as well. Like, it just takes time.
Yeah, the other factor I would say with pressing vinyl as well is the more independent you are, the more you need to really think about pre-orders with vinyl. Don't get me wrong, they can be popular, and if you've got a fan base already there that you know you can shift it to, great. But even that, then you want to get them to pre-order it. So essentially, you've made the money before you've actually released the record, and you can comfortably pay for your vinyl, and you're already, you can already use that money to further the advancement of your release and stuff. So like, that is, I would say, that's, you don't have to do anything, but I would really advise, if you are planning to release vinyl, you take pre-orders, unless you've got a label that's, you're signed to a larger label that's got another plan.
And just to add to that, there's like, on the note of pre-orders, there's a pressing plant in Middlesbrough called Press On, and they have a campaign called Fair Sound, which can be really useful for like independent artists who want to press vinyl and have the audience for it, but don't necessarily have like the upfront capital. And they like, it's a bit hard to describe, but basically like you go to them with the product, and then if you like announce it to your fan base and say that you're doing this Fair Sound campaign, and then when you reach a certain amount of pre-orders, they press the like initial run of the record and cover that upfront cost, and then like basically recoup that cost off of the sales. So you're not like fronting the money, but you're still receiving the profit, which can be a really nice way to like not have to spend loads of money. But then obviously the risk is, can I get to that pressing point where they're gonna like front the costs? But if you've got that fan base there, then it's definitely a good route to check out.
And they're based at where? In Middlesbrough?
In Middlesbrough, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they still do it, but Bandcamp did something similar as well. I'm not sure if they're still running that project, but they were allowing, you got 250 orders, I think, they would press for you. But I get, have a look at Bandcamp, see if that is still there.
Well, now you've brought us on to Bandcamp. Distribution, options, thoughts.
All right. Well, I've got, I guess, two sorts of distributions. I've got my own label, which is like digital distribution globally, with an organization called Believe, a French company.
Yeah.
But generally, I'm not sure if they do, but I think they've stopped kind of doing deals with artists specifically. Well, initially I did a deal with them. They wanted me as an artist, and I signed the whole label. So that's what worked for me. But then I also Bandcamp, I still utilize that as an artist in my own right, singularly. So Bandcamp is really quite useful. SoundCloud did have something, but I don't really use SoundCloud that much. Just maybe for people to listen to rather than trying to sell anything or monetize. But Bandcamp is a very useful tool for like selling music, but and selling merchandise, because I think it's important to think about yourself as an artist as the brand of the business. If you can, I don't know, whatever it may be, a t-shirt. I know I'm going off slightly on a tangent, but you know, whether it be a t-shirt or a pin badge or something that can go along with your physical vinyl, or they can, buy the digital release and pick something else up as well. But yeah, I think Bandcamp is a very useful. I think if you're an independent artist in your own right, I think Bandcamp is probably vital. I think the amount of revenue you can earn from Bandcamp compared to your Spotify or your iTunes is, I can't remember how many times more. Like one sale on Bandcamp is equivalent to like 300 hours of Spotify play. So yeah, I would advise.
There are quite sizable artists still using Bandcamp, aren't they?
Yeah.
I would advise it, because it's if you have no other platform, I think Bandcamp is a great way. Don't get me wrong, you have to then engage with all you're the record label, so you need to do what the record label does in your, singularly yourself. But yeah, it's a great tool. I can't deny it.
Yeah, just to echo that, like, as well as, well, after kind of starting to build things on SoundCloud a bit when we first started Give Me a Break, Bandcamp has been like our primary kind of hub for like releasing music and records. And like we've never had a website because we haven't had to. Like our biggest following across like socials or streaming is on Bandcamp, and I think like building a really organic following of people who are like going to come back every time you send like a email mailer or Bandcamp alert, and they're going to go straight to your Bandcamp page and support the music, even when we're putting up like, sometimes we've done like free like releases where you can like pay as you feel, and people, like, we've always been blown away by like people supporting just because they like the concept of the label and like the music we're putting out. I think it's a very powerful tool And it kind of we were talking about this the other day about market research, and like I think Bandcamp's a very good example of that for my label, because it was the thing that it was the platform that all of the labels we'd been following who were doing similar music were using, and alongside SoundCloud, we could see sales driving, and being DJs, we were buying the music on Bandcamp as well. So I think like in terms of like none of us were going to Beep or buying music on Apple Music, because Bandcamp seemed the most artist friendly and also the highest quality a lot of the time. So I think that was like really important for us and converted really nicely into a good run of sales. I think in terms of like other distribution platforms and stuff, it's the same thing, like market research. Like we started off on DistroKid, not really knowing what we were doing, like just kind of figuring it out, and then we realized, like having been in the same circles as other musical people, that one of our friends had a Believe deal, so we ended up like kind of getting in the door through that and kind of open up that conversation, which we now use. So I think it's just like working out what I always say to artists or like other people who are trying to like scale up their label is look at what your favorite label is doing and try and like almost replicate that, and like try and find out who you need to know to be in those conversations with Believe, or to like scale up your Bandcamp profile and make it look as appealing as possible to the electronic music consumer. But there's definitely a lot of different tools you can like use to accelerate that kind of growth.
So it's definitely as part of, you know, again, your creating your campaign is doing that bit of research, seeing what other artists who are doing similar music to yours is doing, or if you're a label, if you're setting up as a label, look at what other labels are doing and where they're distributing or what they're using. So yeah, and just see what the results are, because I've heard horror stories about DistroKid and Ditto. I've not heard anything horrible about Believe, though, you know, but they're ones that vet, don't they? They've got a vetting process, haven't they? So, you know, again, check out your digital distributors for, and find one that suits your needs. And if you've done your market research, it's sort of, then you can see where people are and who they're with. So but I have heard some horror stories of bad distributors, bad digital distributors. With the physical distribution, if with physical if you've got I mean, if you're doing it yourself or you're a small label, like you said, Bandcamp's great and you can distribute through that. But if you're slightly larger and you've got more volume, what's happening distribution wise? You know, again, back in the day, we had to have a distributor. Otherwise your music wouldn't get into the shops. Yeah. Whereas, you know, nowadays, because there's the digital option, it's not so desperate. But if you're doing sort of mass quantities of and when I say mass, if you're doing 2,000-3,000 and you want that music distributed out there, do you sign to a distributor? Or
well, when I first came, you know, like I said, I started as an artist and you signed to labels and stuff, and exactly what you said, I being signed to Lowlife, I observed and watched everything they did, and then you know, took the parts I needed and, you know, and added my own ideas. But distribution worked in the direction of physical first, digital after. So it was Play It Again, Sam Pius, that I was being distributed on. Still owe me some money, but anyway. And they're still around, they're still doing things, but they're, I would say, physical distributors. would say their requirements are even more what's the word? I can't think of the word. Tough, I guess. They've got tougher requirements now, which would make sense. The economical climate is different. It's there's way more to lose on physical products now. Digital products, once you've made a record, you're just reproducing noughts and ones. That's a dream for a distributor. Whereas physical products, things getting lost in the post, there are a lot more. There's a lot more a physical distributor requires of you. That's why Bandcamp has made such a headway.
Yeah.
Billions, and got bought by a games company and stuff like that. And that's the reason for it, because physical distribution is that hard. And if you want to get, if you're an independent artist just putting a record out by yourself, I don't think that's going to be a reality for you, unless it's Bandcamp. Sell the 3,000 by Bandcamp. Like, just go to the post. You're just going to the post office regular. That's all. But if you are creeping into the larger numbers, I mean, you've probably got someone involved by that point. Like someone's probably come to you and said, "Oh, you've sold this many. We've seen your records everywhere. We'd like to take you further." So, but I don't know. I think I'll stick to that. I think that's going to be the reality, really, in my opinion.
I mean, has Come Play With Me got itself set up with the distributor?
Yeah, so because of like the EMI North partnership, Universal distribute all of our physical products.
Okay.
Which
I
think, like, in terms of like the contrast, I think like I completely agree that when we started Give Me a Break, we did manage to get a physical distributor for our first release, but it was, again, doing the market research, looking at other labels like ours who are just doing like relatively like short runs of records, like still 300-500, but like not into the thousands. And then we kind of just like worked out what distributors they were on, and it's all online, like everything these days. And I think then it's just like sending an email and kind of firing out to quite a few and hoping that something comes back, and luckily something did. That company doesn't exist anymore, so then we had to find a new one, and then it's kind of like then working out different options. And again, we go back to the drawing board, look at like who the other labels that are on our last physical distributor, where have they gone, who are they talking to now, and where do we need to go to make sure that our records are getting into shops. But I think that the contrast is you don't necessarily need a distributor if you're putting enough resources and time into the campaign. If you kind of put the artist first and build their profile, they'll sell 500 records in their Bandcamp. Or in the same way, if you're putting time into building those organic connections with your 10, 15 local record stores in the city, then they're going to take 20, 30, 50 copies each, and then half your stock's gone. And I think it's like, it's a balance of like even now, like, we're still using physical distributors, but we're like still like pushing stuff on Bandcamp. Like, we're still making sure that the stores that we connected with before are getting copies from our distributor. And if our distributor lets us, we'll just take them in store and take a photo and be like, "Oh, just got stocked in Jumbo." Do you know what I mean? Like, it's building those connections and keeping it like a bit human. But then on the other end of the spectrum is like, well, if you want your records in Japan, then you're probably going to need to be on like not Universal, but you know what I mean? Like,
you're going to need someone who does that. Yeah. All right.
Well,
so
can I slightly speak to not the contrary, but like my last album was quite interesting because I didn't have a physical distributor for that, but I'd taken so many pre-orders on Bandcamp and then sold it a lot through Bandcamp and my own website, the label website, directly through the label website, that the record shops came to me.
Oh,
and
nice.
Then I sold, do you know what I mean, directly some sale and return who were local, but others I was like, "I'm sorry, you're too far away, I can't do sale and return." And then I mean, I've had it for a long time, but I got sales from Japan through my Bandcamp because the social media I was dry. You know, everybody knew there was somewhere to get it from.
And
You
that's the
didn't have
benefit of
the shop.
Bandcamp. Like we've had like Bandcamp sales of physicals from all over. I just more meant kind of like getting into record stores without them necessarily coming to you, without a distributor. It's tricky, but definitely doable. Like we've got a friend who runs a label in London for dance music, and when he's been touring as a DJ globally, he'll just make sure that he goes into record stores, takes an email, fires them a line when he's got a record coming out, and then he's got sales like outside of the UK. So it's another good way to do it. Obviously, it's easier when you're a touring DJ, so that's nice. But
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So local record stores or regional ones, or that you might build up a relationship with, sale or return still exists.
Yeah.
Wow.
it's relationship based though, isn't it? You can't do that with everyone, and you've got to be mindful, because you know the years could pass. You know, you gave them 10 records, you sold 8, but you didn't sell 10, and you might have left that like a year or so ago, and you like I literally have to collect some records because I've sold most of them, that they just didn't sell the last one, so I didn't collect for everything. So there's things where you have to, you know, be vigilant, I guess, you know.
Because back in the 80s, late 80s, you know, we'd walk in with a box under our arms and go, right, here's 25, and if they wanted it and liked it, you drop that box of 25, and if it went well, you'd go back in with another box of 25. The best day ever was when Black Market from London called and said, are you responsible for blah 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 release? Yeah. Can you send us a box of 25? And it's just wow. 25 12-inch down to London. From little old Huddersfield.
There's like HMV. I used to we had distribution with Pius, but then I also had like distribution for my more independent stuff like mixtapes and stuff like that. And HMV used to engage with hip hop quite a lot when they were in their prime, but they were also, they'd squeeze you. You know, it's just like the farmer or the milk, you know, the milk people. What are they called? Anyway, people who produce milk or eggs or whatever. They just kept squeezing them because they were so big. So you'd be trying, you know, HMV. If you can get your record in there and get them to take 300, 400 across all their stores, like that's going to drive you to the next level, and it did. But at the same time, they set the terms and conditions for sale and return. So that kind of stuff, it's over, that kind of stuff. But if you can go out there and engage, if you've got the time and the man hours to go out there and engage with local shops and say, look, I've got this release, you take 20 or 10 or 5, you know, just to get your, and a shop like Vinyl Tap Records, Mark, there's a guy called Mark in Vinyl Tap Records in Huddersfield, and he's really engaged with, you know, like local talent. If you've got something and he likes it, because he's genuine as well, he'll put it front of the shop and let people know it's local talent, and he'll try and get it sold for you, most importantly. So and I'm sure there's plenty of other local shops all across the UK that do the same, you know.
Same
but
thing,
that's
still. Well, it's nice. It's nice for an old person like myself to hear that it's still happening after all these years. Okay, all right, guys. Well, look, shall we now open it up? Has anyone got any questions or, you know, issues that you can see arising that you'd like some advice on? Peter, go.
Yeah, while we're talking about physical distribution, physical formats, what do you do these days? I mean, I've been at the loop for a long time in all this shit. I know, I mean, vinyl is all the rage at the moment. CDs seem to be dropping, but vinyl is a lot more expensive to get produced than CDs. I hear people talking about cassettes, but I mean, that's a comedy format as far as I'm concerned.
You and me both.
What do you do? What would you guys advise an independent artist putting out their own material? Where do you go with physical formats?
I personally think with new artists that we're working with now at Come Play With Me, it's a really hard one, because I think over like the last, I don't know how long, let's say decade, vinyl sales have obviously massively increased, but over the last couple of years, that like kind of that growth has kind of plateaued a little bit. And I think like, especially in the current economic climate, like most of the consumers for my label as well haven't necessarily got the financial resources available to front for like a £20 record every month, or however often they want to buy that. So I think it's really hard. I would say a lot of the new artists we're working with, we try to test the ground first. So whether it's a run of digital singles that can build some kind of profile and exposure for the band or artist, and then working out how we can start introducing some sort of physical format, whether it's merch or lyric sheets or something small that is a face-to-face interaction at gigs, or it's something that they can sell, and then it's immediately setting up that kind of almost bargaining position, that kind of conversation around, let's exchange, you're going to buy into my music, and I'm going to give you music. And it kind of sets up that dialogue, so that then when the debut EP or the debut album's ready, if it's got to that point where you've maybe done a run of t-shirts and a run of tote bags and a run of cassettes even. I think cassettes is a bit of a tricky one, because it is a bit of I think people want it to be taken more seriously, but I think at the moment it does feel like it's still a bit of a novelty thing, in the way that like a band t-shirt is. Like, people will wear a band t-shirt with pride, and a cassette might sit on a shelf at home with pride, but it's probably never going to get played, which is a shame. But if people are buying it, then it's a good indication that they'll buy into a record. So I think it's just trying to scale it up that way, take like almost slightly tentative steps, because the reality with vinyl is that it is so expensive to produce, and the margins can be great if you do it right, but it's like for a band releasing music for the first time, unless you know that your audience is really devoted to vinyl as a format itself, and is obviously devoted to the music, then go for it. But I definitely would try and build up towards it these days. And most of the artists we're working with for Give Me a Break are like artists we've released with digitally over the course of like 2 years, and now they're at a point where they're ready to do vinyl, or they've been with other labels and they've been releasing vinyl well, and now we're stealing them. So yeah, it's a bit of a grim reality with vinyl at the moment, but yeah, that's my take.
Well, I 100% agree with everything Luke said, but I would add another facet to it. And what I would say is, I would take two approaches. I would definitely say, do it when you have built up some kind of following. Like that's going to be needed there. Yeah, but I think there are two approaches. There's the tentative build up and ease them into the idea of buying physical products from you, or there's the shock and awe approach, kind of. And what you do is you create a package, so you bundle things together. So all of your lyrics, they become a product. So like with my last album, I sold double vinyl album, a lyric book, a CD, a pin badge that ties to the label, not necessarily me as an artist. Can't think, t-shirt. So you could buy those things individually, but you could also buy it all as a package. And you start knocking a little, because you make way more money on a t-shirt than you make off a record. I'm able to, they call it loss leadering or whatever they call it, supermarkets do it, but I can reduce how much money I make on a t-shirt. I can reduce a little bit more money I make on a lyric book. and then the package comes out at maybe £40 or 45, and the listeners, the person might be like, well, the album's £10 or the vinyl's 20, but if I just buy all of this is £40. This represents value to money for me, and they go for that. So that's a strategy. Don't get me wrong. It's different strokes for different folks and stuff, but that can be an approach as well, where you shock and awe, you put it all together, and people are getting this wonderful bundle of stuff, and they get a chance to like immerse themselves into your world all in one purchase. That can work. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
that's a lot of outlay and a lot of risk you're taking. So the tentative approach and building them up to getting used to like finally engaging with buying this EP, that's probably the smarter route if you don't have that following.
You can also, I mean, once you have got a bit of a following, and because if digital is the easiest release option, is once you've got that following, you can put out feelers. Do any of you still listen to CDs, and see what response you get, or on your social medias, or would any of you be interested if we release this on vinyl, or and just do some research that way and find out what your audience wants.
Definitely research your audience.
Yeah. Athol, you've got a question, or you want to jump in?
Yeah, my question was just actually kind of to do with physical formats, but in the digital world. I have people sometimes offer the sale of stuff on USB. I just wondered what you thought about that.
I think it's really cool. I think in the electronic scene, it's become very popular in like the last year, which has taken me a bit by surprise, but doesn't surprise me that much because you need a USB to DJ. But yeah, weirdly, it's kind of it's been exciting because, well, in the electronic scene anyway, like the whole dub plate culture and like having dubs on your USB, like unreleased tracks, it's a way of having a really strong sense of exclusivity around like a 50 run of USBs that are never going to get repressed again, and you can charge however much for them. I think they're cool. I think they're a tiny bit tacky, but it's okay, because it's something different. And I think there's a label that I've been following for a while called EC2A, who just absolutely nailed it on like the visual branding. I've got no idea how much it would take to make a USB and like custom build it, but like the branding was so on point that you like when you plugged it in, there was like a light up logo of the label, and it all looked very good and very sleek. So I was very impressed. But I think it's a good example of a label who's been doing vinyl for years and has sold well and has done dub plates for years on like lacquer vinyl, then taking, like you said, a physical format, but like digitizing it so that it appeals to every single DJ who wants to just plug it in, drag it over to their like record box software, and then put it straight on like their USB ready to DJ in the club. And I think in terms of like getting that exclusivity, it was a very smart move. I don't know whether it's something that will have much longevity, because I think when it's been done a couple of times, I think the novelty might wear off a little bit. But I think it's definitely a good example of people doing that market research, seeing the patterns, seeing the trends. Vinyl's maybe not selling as well because it's a bit more expensive. Looking at like the hype around certain artists' unreleased tunes, and then capitalizing on that with a physical product that people can buy into. But yeah, I think it was cool.
Well, it didn't. The novelty did wear off very rapidly in the early 2000s when that was an option.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, for me, and I suppose it's a bit like you, Peter, saying with the cassettes, it's like, why?
I think
my 9-year-old grandson wanted a Walkman, which I bought him, for his birthday, and he sits and listens to cassettes, and he's 9 years old. we wouldn't touch, because especially since we were in the manufacturing sector of the industry, wouldn't touch cassettes now with a barge pole, but people are buying them and
Well,
artists
I
are
think
releasing on them.
Well, I think there's an interesting relationship with like tape was like almost like the first personally accessible format, you know, and then USB is kind of they've got similar characteristics, even though they're at other opposite ends of the timeline. I think USBs are very specific to like demographics and listener bases. I think you've got to really know that that's your listenership is into that kind of thing. Like, funnily enough, the first album, like the flagship album, I said I used to release on the like the debut release for the label and stuff. The album was called A Loop Theory, and we got into the idea of let's put it on USBs. It's a loop, isn't it? It's like, oh, it'll be a marketing. We can use that. But like I said, it's they both have both tape and USB. They both have waves of novelty. They fade in and out. Like they get uncool and then they get cool again and they get uncool. So I think timing of it and knowing your listener base, like, because I think doing that with a listener group that's just Spotify's got them. Like you can't beat that. You've got to join it in a way. So what I do is like utilize streams and people buying lyric books. So like they might not want to buy the record anymore, but they'll buy something else and engage with the music. So that's
Yeah, just to add on things coming in waves. Like I think obviously like vinyl's been around for a long time, but I think with like you were saying about understanding a scene, I think with the garage scene where like we were starting, there was just a massive like wave of people engaging in vinyl, and I think it's that sense of like the nostalgia, like old school UK garage fans from like the 2000s are buying records, and 18-year-olds are buying records, because there's that like divide in a whole generation who can engage for different reasons. The 18-year-old because they've never touched a record in their life and they've got their headphones on Spotify plugged in, and the person from the 2000s who's like, oh, I used to have this huge garage collection and I want to get it going again. Like I think it's, like you said, getting the timing right and striking when the iron's hot kind of thing.
Rob, thanks for joining us.
No problem. Sorry, I was about 10 minutes late.
That's all right.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Magic. Yeah, just want to say it's been really useful listening to you all. Really, really cool. And wanted to ask Nigel, what was I might have missed it at the very beginning because I in typical musician and DJ fashion, I was late. Not to tie you all with that brush. But I was wanting to ask you what your Bandcamp was, or your artist name or whatever, so I could check some of your stuff out.
Oh, Savvy, aka A Saviour. But I mean, if you just type Savvy A Saviour Bandcamp, I'm sure Google will pull me up. Yeah. And
also to Luke, are you doing anything in Leeds with the Give Me a Break label? Do you do any nights or anything like that?
Yeah, we actually did a run of nights last year, and then we kind of stopped to focus on the label a bit. But there should be some more parties this year, so we're going to try and get that going again. I was chatting to Louis about it last night, so yeah, there should be some this year. Cool. But we always share it on like socials, Facebook.
I'm going to follow you on the Bandcamp and all that. So yeah, I've run labels for years and
cool.
From London originally, and I've been up in Yorkshire for 10 years now. So I do a few clubs in Leeds, like District Bar and Mint Warehouse and bits and pieces like that.
Nice.
So, and I found out about this tonight from Yorkshire Youth for Music, who I do some sort of youth and community freelance work for and stuff. So
all right,
jump on and see what you're all up to. But yeah, I'm interested in checking out that label. I used to do a lot of UK garage in the early 2000s.
Nice.
Like So Solid Crew, and work with other artists like that.
Wicked.
And I make a lot of house, techno, electro, breakbeat. So sort of a lot of it's sort of all fusing back together a lot more now. So I might even send you some music, mate.
Go for it. Love to hear it. That'd be class.
But yeah, thank
That's
you ever
wicked.
so much, all of you.
Hey, no,
cheers.
that's the problem. Welcome to Yorkshire. Are you enjoying it?
Yeah,
Have you
well,
enjoyed your 10
can't you
years?
tell by my deep Yorkshire accent? I've been here for 10 years now. I'm over near Selby, which is I'm over in a little village called Colton, which is in between Selby and Goole.
Right.
So it takes me about half an hour to get into Leeds. I was working in Huddersfield on yesterday, and that takes me a good. If I leave at a good time, it takes me about 45 minutes ish to get over to Huddersfield, Halifax sort of way. So you can get everywhere in Yorkshire, right? It's not like London.
Yeah.
And I can still get back to London hour and a half on the train, and you can I can get back and go and see Crystal Palace. Normally lose my team. I can watch that I can watch them lose from afar. That's fine.
Yeah.
But no, it's been really useful. I'm doing I've been doing a master's degree this year, and which is like music industry enterprise with Waterbear. They're in Sheffield now, but I'm under Brighton, and a lot of it for me has been kind of, I've never stopped making or releasing music or having involvement with labels, but you get so many old school sort of original artists from back in the day that are super old, like me being 50, that kind of, they're just moaning about the music scene. And for me, it's like I wanted to remove those kind of biases.
Yeah.
Sort of look at, I've been releasing digitally and everything else, but sort of just taking a step back and looking at how this is all really working properly and using it to your advantage, rather than just complaining about, oh yeah, the music industry used to be great and now no one makes any money. It's like, if you're a bit more savvy about it, or like you guys are being as well, that you can sort of, you can find where the gaps are, you can find where the opportunities are, and networking like this as well is obviously always great.
Yeah.
Sounds wicked.
Brilliant.
Peter, out of interest, will your band go out gigging next year?
Yeah, well, we've been starting gigging this year. We've only got about half a dozen gigs under our belts so far, but it's going pretty well. So we've done a few charity all day type things.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's a great place to get started, but we're ready to start picking up on, or trying to get ourselves around to get some decent supports, support slots at decent venues, the Brudenell or the Parish, places like that now, which I think is the right direction for us to try and get ourselves in front of people who are. The trouble with the all-dayer type thing is that people show up with the band shows up with their mates, and they all bugger off again afterwards. So everybody gets a tiny audience at those kinds of things, which is not. Yeah. It's not great for building a fan base. It's a good start. It's good practice. It's gigging. Can't argue with that. And it's not that I don't love gigging, but we're looking to get something a bit more substantial now, that we can get ourselves in front of people, so people who don't already know us can see what we're about. Yeah.
Okay, great. Right, has anyone got anything else they want to ask, or?
Well, I was just going to say, Pete, that I don't know, it's not confirmed yet, but I'm working on a little project which is to do with like grassroots talent and Spotify playlisting and clubs and venues and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I haven't announced the project because we're not confirmed yet, but if you keep an eye on our website, saving-grace.co.uk, I'll drop me an email or something. I will keep you posted about the progress of that project, because that's something that could help like artists like yourself.
I'll do that.
I can share emails.
Yeah.
Shall I do that?
That would be great. Yes, please. Sam.
Yeah, and I can I can also link your website as well, Savvy. And yes, Luke, I'm all right to share your email. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Athol.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of say something slightly related to what Pete was saying, and also it's a bit of a question as well. I mean, Sarah mentioned before, I play with a band called Clonk, but actually the band I'm probably most associated with is called the Haggis Horns, and we I've been around for quite a long time, have our own label now, Haggis Records. We were kind of signed originally to a smaller Leeds label called First Word, and kind of did a similar thing where we followed, where we decided to go independent at the time when a lot of people, when it suddenly became a bit easier to become independent, we kind of piggybacked off of their distribution, which was called Kudos at the time. And we're still with them now for like physicals and stuff like that. What I was going to say to Pete was, I mean, I think it's a bit different. I mean, we were quite lucky because we're a funk band, and we used to kind of piggyback on all the club nights associated with funk. So there'd be like DJs, but the nights themselves would put on bands. So we were kind of quite lucky that we didn't have to kind of do as many of the kind of grassroots kind of thing, like the charity events and things like that, to build up our following. But that kind of led me on to thinking, how important do you guys think that getting a booking agent is for your artists? Because we've kind of not used an agent for quite a while now, and it's something that we're really wanting to get back into, because no one's really got the time to just be putting into sorting out all these things, so I just wondered if you had some recommendations, if you know anyone, or just the kind of value you'd put on having a booking agent.
Yeah, I feel like me and my colleague Eva, who's the label manager at Come Play With Me, we manage an artist called Bugteeth, and we're in a similar position where, like, as managers, we're doing all their bookings and like doing their tour, and it's a lot of work, and like on top of distributing releases and everything else, it's really hard to get the balance. And I think when the band are at a point where, like with Haggis Horns, like you have a good like live history, and there's a good market there who are going to come to the shows regularly in different cities, I think a booking agent makes sense. I think, in my opinion anyway, I think the amount of time they can save can be beneficial, but I do think it's making sure, like it's at the right point in your kind of career. But I know I've been following Haggis Horns for a while, and that's wicked. I feel like it would definitely make sense. But again, for me, again, it comes back to like the market research thing. It's like, who's the booking agent for like bands that you've been following, or what's your ideal support tour, and who's the booking agent for that? Can you get in the door that way? Like, is it maybe going to like networking events and trying to meet people? Because the biggest, I know this is probably a much longer conversation, but the biggest thing we found about booking agents is that nobody's going to come up to Leeds to come see a band. Like, we have to go down to London, book a London headliner, and just try and get as many booking agents in the door as possible. Say again, sorry, Pete.
It's always been like that. It was like that in the 80s, and I'm desperate.
Yeah, it's a real shame that it hasn't changed. And like, obviously the EMI North stuff has been really cool to see in terms of some sort of decentralization, but I think like the live stuff just hasn't followed suit, and I don't know if it will anytime soon. But I think that's kind of the tip I'd say, is like, if you're trying to find a booking agent, just like find an agent's website, and they've always got their emails on there because they have to email them about their artist bookings.
Yeah.
So just fire out as many as you can, try and get them down to a London show, and then like build those like relationships there and see if it could work. But I think it's a worthwhile addition to your team, I think.
Great, thanks. I mean, I think one of the things is our last release was bang at the start of lockdown, and we had a whole tour lined up, and basically it just felt like the momentum kind of went a bit, because obviously we had a lead up time of writing the stuff, recording the stuff, getting it physically produced, and then we had a tour lined up, and then it just felt like it just didn't happen, So I think that's great advice, and I think we just need to kind of wait until we've got some stuff to promote. But thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd add to that is, and it's only a minute thing, try and make sure it's non-exclusive so that you can seek out, like maybe, in an ideal world, your booking agent is getting you 3 gigs a week, and then you might pick up the odd one here and there every month or so in your own right, and then you're more open to opportunity. It's and there's also it's similar to what Luke was talking about by having a label get involved with you as an artist, and you've been doing it independently all how many years you've been doing it. The label gets involved, and you give up. You let go, and you let the label, thinking that the label will do everything for you. And it's like, well, no, the label got involved with you because you were tenacious as well as talented. So it works the same with bookings as well. The booking agent, not all, like plenty of booking agents are like, yeah, you've got to be talented and you've got to be a good live act. But there's also, I know plenty of booking agents are like, how resourceful are they? How tenacious are they? Have they been booking gigs themselves in the past, and I'm taking over and elevating it? Or am I going from ground zero and trying to get them into gigs? And I guarantee a booking agent's going to be more interested in you if you've at least made the effort to have some gigs happen and get out there, even if you're not getting paid. But I don't know, Athol, you're at the stage where that's not the case. But it's definitely, it's on you to get the ball rolling, and then when you engage with that booking tour manager, booking agent, manager of that band that you want to try and get the support slot to, you'd be like, oh well, we played these gigs the last couple of months and we've done this, that and the other, and we've got some videos out and whatever else, that they're more likely to then engage with you and give you that shot at the support slot or the tour for the next release or whatever it may be. That's
brilliant. Yeah, thanks. Because I am wanting to do like a solo thing at some point, which is basically, even though you've kind of got a bit of a name associated with you, it's still going to be kind of starting from scratch with it, So that's great. Thanks, guys.
All right, everybody. Well, look, we've actually hit the end of our time. So it's been great. And I hope you've all enjoyed it. And thank you very much. And thank you, Luke and Savvy, for all your input. And thank you, Rob, Pete and Athol, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. That was great fun. Nice to see you all.
Thanks for having us.
All right.